I was surprised at the goal. I was surprised the way it played out. Escobar was a guy that I knew pretty well from playing against him a few times. He didn't seem rattled, I think, after it happened. So I tried to say, mala suerte, like, hey, that's bad luck. I'll never forget. It's kind of chilling. He said, you no idea. No idea. And I just went, okay.
Eric Wynalda, forward striker for the US men's national team, who took part in USA 94, was involved in probably one of the most controversial games in World Cup history, which is one of the darkest ever moments. Eric took us back to June the 22nd, 1994, USA versus Colombia, Pasadena Rose Bowl, incredible crowd, and over 93,000 packed in. Colombians had been fancied coming into the tournament. They had a great qualification win against Brazil, yet they lost their first game amid a backdrop of uncertainty in their homeland, with drug lord Pablo Escobar being murdered the year before. Andres Escobar, the Colombian captain, the stand-up guy, the leader of the team, the leader of the country's hopes, scored an own goal in the game, which eventually the US ran out 2-1 winners. 10 days later, while getting into an argument outside a nightclub in Medellin, trying to defend his honor, trying to defend his country's honor, Escobar was shot 8 times and murdered. I'm Steve Brunner, senior reporter of the US Sun, and today we're joined by US national team soccer legend Eric Wynalda, who takes us back to that storied day of June the 22nd, 1994, when the USA played Colombia in front of a Pasadena Rose Bowl crowd of over 93,000. USA 94, brings back a lot of memories, good and bad, in terms of the way that maybe some people saw that tournament. But we're going to focus solely on June 22nd, 1994. Obviously, the second game of the group stage, USA Colombia. Colombia obviously going in as favourites, or had a very, very strong team, great qualifying process, beat Brazil, lost their first game, so there was a lot of pressure. What do you just remember about the build up to that game? Obviously, you had your USA head on, and they were a really up and coming team with a lot of great players. What do you remember about the build up?
Well, we knew them really well. I think that was the greatest advantage that we had. We weren't afraid of them. Having some of the build-up games. My first goal, international goal, was against Colombia in Miami a couple years prior to that, and we'd played against them a couple times thereafter. So we knew all about Valderrama and Freddie Rincon, Esprilla, Alvarez, and Escobar. They were a very good team, and we were very familiar with them. First couple of games, obviously, your head's on a swivel. The ball's moving pretty quick. They're very talented. But once we figured out how to play against them, and especially having the home field advantage in Pasadena, I think that day worked out for us because of a lot of things. It wasn't just the on-the-day performance.
I mean, there's been obviously a lot of talk about tickets, for this game, for this edition of the World Cup. But in Pasadena that day, 93,869. I mean, what was it? Take us there. What was the atmosphere like that day?
Well, I'll tell you, it was really interesting because only a couple weeks prior to that, we played our last send-off game at the Rose Bowl against Mexico, and that was not a home crowd. That was predominantly Mexican. We even got booed during the national anthem, and some of that stuff was it was wonderful because we won the game. It gave us a pretty big confidence boost going into it, but the home support really wasn't there. The first time or the last time we had visited Pasadena, I think it was a couple of things, like the culmination of us winning the first game, or winning a point against Switzerland, and then coming into this game off of the victory against Mexico. It was very different. It just felt American, and maybe for the first time. I mean, one of the things that you have to understand about U.S. soccer and the federation is that you look at things now, it's like we're trying to find the biggest stadium we possibly can to play in. Back then, now we were trying to avoid that at all costs. We had a federation that didn't believe that we could handle a big stadium, and it was more about avoiding embarrassment. So this was a pretty big occasion, especially with everything, the culmination, everything that was going on with the Colombians, which we were very aware of. We knew that there was some a whole bunch of stuff going on. I mean, we could see it in their eyes when we played, and I think on the day, our performance was really terrific. But I do think we capitalized a little bit on their insecurities.
Obviously, it's been well documented they were receiving death threats. I think after the
Right.
first game, there was a lot of pressure. Pablo Escobar, the underworld drug lord, had been murdered the year before, so there's a lot of instability and a lot of violence on the streets in Colombia. It became kind of lawless. But You just mentioned that you were aware that they had been affected. Can you just expand on that? What did you actually see?
Well, I mean, it wasn't the first time, I mean, when it was the first visit for Colombia in the United States, and there always seemed to be this entourage of people that were following them around, giving them the, "Hey, you better win or else," attitude. And, I think obviously that got escalated to the whole new level with being with the World Cup. And when they lost their first game, I mean, remember the way that thing went down. Haji hit a pill in the top corner, and um, you know, I I I don't think anybody stops that. But there was just this growing feeling of they're underperforming and they better get their act together. And they ran into us at the wrong time.
And then as the game obviously transpired just towards the end of the first half, Andres Escobar, the captain, their leader, he was like a bastion, wasn't he, for Colombian football? Was a very clean cut, good guy. Obviously scored an own goal, and then obviously Ernie Stewart then put you two up. But when then Andres scored that own goal, that was a real boost, obviously for you guys. But did you? I know obviously you were in the moment, you were going from the US, but in retrospect, did you feel that that was just a really deflating moment for the Colombians and just kind of pulled everything out of from underneath the thing?
In the game, no. In the game, I think they all recognized it was a bit of bad luck. They were like, "All right, come on, let's go. Go. We know we can beat these guys." And they had some real good chances even right after the goal, the own goal. And we had some as well. It was a very good game. If you go back and watch it, it was a terrific game. Um, but I didn't feel like they were rattled. I just felt like, this was just a moment that they felt that they could overcome. But coupled with the game that they just came out of, it just felt like when everything is going wrong, even there's still more to it. With that, I was surprised at the goal. I was surprised the way it played out. Escobar was a guy that I knew pretty well from playing against him a few times, and he didn't seem rattled. I think after it happened, but overall, I think the entire team on that walk off at halftime, when it's time to leave, it was time to leave the field. They didn't have that Colombian pride that they usually had. They didn't have their chests out. They had their heads down. And to be honest with you, we talked about it at halftime, and we recognized that we had drawn first blood. We made the first punch. We knocked them down, and this was a time to be ruthless, not to be cautious. And to our team's credit, we came out of that at a halftime with the intention of getting the second goal. That was our goal. That was what we wanted. And if you really go back and watch that second half, we could have had two or three. There was a couple of really good chances in that game. Lexi with the header, great save. Marcelo with the overhead kick. Alexi actually scores a goal that they call offside. If we had VAR today, that's a goal. So I think we as a team and as a nation, we capitalized on a couple of things. One, they were down, we knocked them down, and we weren't going to let them get up. And the crowd got behind us. When we came out of that locker room at halftime, man, it was like, all right, we've got a support system here, and we took full advantage.
Sure. Ernie Stewart then, yeah, obviously put you two up. They got a consolation in the 90th minute, 2-1, Colombia are out. And I think you told me when we spoke last week that you went up to Andres afterwards and tried to console him. What happened with that?
Well, I mean, we had exchanged jerseys a few times, and we participated in a UNICEF game, I believe. Sorry, my memory's failing me. I'm getting old, but we were no stranger to each other. We knew each other really well, and I will say this about the man: as a player, as nasty as Colombia was, he was a perfect gentleman, man. He played the game hard. He played the game fair. Um, he was first to help you up if he took you down. And I always admired him for the way he acted on the field, but he had never really spoken English. And I don't think he really spoke English, to be honest with you. I don't know if his English was very good. And I tried my best to speak Spanish. In all of my moments with some of those guys and some of those exhibition matches or the friendlies that we participated in. So I tried to say, mala suerte, like, hey, that's bad luck, and I'll never forget, it's kind of chilling, but he said, I think what he was trying to say is, you have no idea. And that's not what he said. He said, you no idea, no idea. And I just went, okay. And I kind of took that as a moment to like realize that yeah, okay, just they're going through something. And I had never heard him, say anything like that prior in all the other times that we played against each other. But it was kind of, especially when we got the news, we were in our hotel, and that's what I woke up to. I turned the TV on, and we were right in the middle of, to letting the world know that he had been killed. And it was just like you sit up and you just got chills, because it was just such a moment in time where you can't imagine, like, really? Like, no. And it was really hard to believe in that moment. Um, but to be honest with you, I felt like that was a guy that if there's players that you play against, or you're familiar with in the international level, he was one of them. And I maybe that's why I took that to heart a little bit more than just, hey, some guy that plays soccer died. It was more than that to me.
He obviously got gunned down when he got into an argument out in a nightclub outside with a few guys. You mentioned that he was a kind of stand-up guy, that he was the captain. There's an element of that, isn't there? The fact of his character, that he was trying to kind of defend himself and just be normal and just speak to these people. But unfortunately, as we mentioned, because of the death of Pablo Escobar the year before that, everything just felt a little bit lawless. So, he was trying to do good, wasn't he? And unfortunately, he
Yeah.
just
I think he also felt that because people knew him and his character, that he was not, he's, somewhat untouchable, if you will. And without, that was, to us, it was like, of all the guys to lose his life, obviously the own goal, and it's going to be attached to that. And we know the story behind it, which was unfortunate, but it's just that I would have never, it's just not the guy that if anybody was capable of getting forgiveness for something like that, it would be him, because of his nature, because of his character. And it really was, it was a really hard one for
was
the
it hard
world
for
to
you to
take, the world of football to take, because that he was such a gentleman.
that was when he the timeline, when he was killed, were you still in the tournament at that point, or it
Yeah,
finished?
yeah. So we were preparing still. We were still in the we still had to play against Brazil, I believe. And I might be wrong, I might be right. I don't know. Maybe it was after the Brazil game. It's all a blur really, but I remember being in the hotel, the team hotel, when I first got the news. I don't know exactly what those timelines were.
Sure. But obviously you were in shock, and then you went to Medellin, didn't you, afterwards to meet with his family?
Yes, I did have a jersey that we efforted to try and get back to the family. Now, this is the hard part, and this is the part I've never really shared. Um, we were duped. We thought we were giving the shirt back to the family, and somebody pretended to be his sister, and we gave the shirt to the wrong person, which still to this day has me um, really upset about it, because when somebody mentioned it and Fernando Clavijo, who's no longer with us, um, put together that event that we went down there, and I was assured that the jersey was going to be given to his family, and somebody tricked us, and I don't know where that jersey went, which is really a shame. It's really sad that I still have one more, I think, that's locked up in one of those boxes, but it's not that jersey. So I'm gonna try and figure that out.
So was it someone pretending to be his sister?
Apparently, yeah. We went to the event, and we should have been far more cautious about it, but we weren't, and it's quite a shame.
Just could you just what was the scene like when you were there? Obviously, it was such a national tragedy and such a terrible story, but I guess
Well,
his
we went back down to Medellin well after. This is 20 years removed from the event, so we played in a game, I think, so the guys that played Asprilla stayed in our hotel. It was actually a really rough week, because Joe Max Moore, who had traveled down with me, was staying and it's probably the reason why we were so distracted, but his mother passed away, while he was on the trip, and he had to leave and go home. So we were probably more focused on that, and probably why we weren't as adamant as making sure that we knew where everybody was. But some of the former guys from that team played in the game, and it was a fun event. But I was really disappointed to find out after that we we didn't get that jersey to its destination. And there's somebody out there. Shame on you for that.
So you held on to the jersey for like 20 years, and then when you got the opportunity to
Right.
go, yeah, right, right, right.
And I felt, and there's so many people that want me to sell it, put it on eBay, all that crap, and I just felt that wasn't the appropriate action. It should have gone to his family, and unfortunately we weren't able to achieve that.
That's so sad. But I mean, on reflection,
It's just tragedy on top of tragedy with this one.
yeah,
It doesn't get any better.
it's a shame because obviously that was such a great day for US soccer, and that whole period was great. And for you, was this always in the back of your mind when you always think about that World Cup, that you had such a great run, but this was always kind of there?
You know, I think it's one of the I still I think it's held in regards to some of the better wins we've ever had in a World Cup. It feels, when some people talk about it, there's a reason for it to be a tainted result because of all of what was going on, and even to a certain extent, where I went back and watched it, the game, and we deserved to win on the day. Colombia, well, obviously was going through a lot of stuff, but on the day, I thought we were the better side. But I mean, the tragedy happened after that game, but running around the stadium and in the Rose Bowl, beating possibly the best team on the planet in a World Cup setting is still going to be a fond memory for all of us.
I saw you saying that Bora start having a go at you or something? He started shouting at you when you were running around the pitch?
No,
Is that
no, no. What happened was Boro was a piece of work, but if you go back and watch the videos, it was so hot on the day, and I actually was developing a blister. That's the reason why I got subbed. Or a little hot spot, if you will, on my foot. It never really turned, but I was struggling a little bit, and I wasn't, it wasn't uncommon for me to be one of the first subs for Bora's teams. He did that quite a bit, but I took off my socks and my shoes and was running around with the American flag after the victory with all my teammates. And Bora, of course, looked at me, saw that I didn't have shoes on, and said, "So unprofessional, so unprofessional." And I told him to F off, and he smiled. So that was kind of a cool moment for us. But I mean, look, all things being equal, Bora gets a lot of credit for a lot of that. And there's a lot of madness within, and a lot of us didn't understand what his methodology was at times. But I'll give our boys a lot of credit. Our team deserved the success we had. We went out to dinner in Chicago at the Greek Islands. Go to the Greek Islands and go see Frankie Klopas. That's the best place to eat in Chicago. But even broke a plate at the end, which no restaurant's going to let you do that. But we actually broke a plate on purpose, so for good luck. But we talked about that. We talked about the team. We talked about the spirit of the team, and Bora, who didn't attend this occasion, where we were just in Chicago for the send off, and I just feel like sometimes he gets a little bit too much credit. That team persevered through a lot of stuff as well, and he gets credit for leading us when I think we could have done a better job, especially after we qualified for the knockout stage, to really address the opposition of Brazil in a more offensive way. But he made some choices that I'll never forgive him for, and we lost that game. Who knows if John Harkes doesn't get suspended, Claudio Reyna doesn't pull his hamstring, and Tab Ramos doesn't get hurt just before halftime. Who knows what we could have been able to do against Brazil?
sure? Okay, right, just finally, I've drawn the US in the office sweepstakes. So, what do you think? What do you think of what do you think of their chances? What do you think
I
of my
think,
chances of
look,
winning the money?
the World Cups are crazy, and it's a crapshoot at times. The first game will be very telling. Paraguay has just lost one of their best players through injury. We don't celebrate that, but we certainly as the Colombia game was. It's an opportunity to take advantage of the circumstances. So they got to get off on the right foot. I do think Australia is a game that they will win. And then it will really come down to the Turkey game. And if they can get a point and move on, and then it really is, as I said, a crapshoot. We don't know how the other teams are going to do. We don't know how some of our next opponent in the rock and knockout stage, who they will be. If somebody else is struggling, we come in first and we get a great team that struggled, and now we get the second place team or even a third place team. You never know who you're going to get. This is definitely an interesting one because there's so many more teams. I mean, if you go back and you look at that World Cup in '94, there's twice as many teams in the tournament now than there was then. So, and you got to play one more game. So it's a bit crazy, but I do think the U.S. is very capable of going far in this competition. They've got the home field advantage. They'll have that support if they stay healthy and stay out of suspension trouble. They're going to be a team to be reckoned with. I really do. I was watching them play and lose against Germany is one thing, but there's a lot of good moments in there, and there was a lot of turnover. I think if it's a game that we have to win and we don't make that many substitutions, the U.S. walks out of there with a point or a win against Germany. So I'm not as concerned as most.
Great. Okay. If you never actually really talked about the fact you gave that you got duped about the jersey.
I was embarrassed. I mean, to be honest with you, I was embarrassed. I mean, our intention was to give it back to the family, and we found out after the case that wasn't the way that all played out. And look, I mean, I was in Colombia. I trusted some people that spoke Spanish, and I was not able to really make out, what was going on. And I said, well, it belongs in the family's hands. And then I trusted the wrong people to that. And then
Did the
it
family,
just
the
it
family
happened.
kind of, it wasn't your fault, was it? But I guess the family were upset as well, right?
I'm not entirely sure what their reaction was. And I mean, Colombia is a wild place, man. Stuff like that can happen. If it's going to happen anywhere, that would be the place for it. But it really is a shame.
Sure. Okay. All right. Listen, Eric, thanks so much. Well, that was a remarkable insight from Eric Wynalda there, talking about those days at USA 94 and revealed to the US Sun that 20 years later, obviously, he tried to return the jersey to Andres Escobar's family, yet was duped by someone pretending to be one of his nearest and dearest. It was arguably one of the darkest days in World Cup history. And yet, as Eric told the US Sun just there, another slice of tragedy to be heaped upon a really sad, tragic story for Colombia, for Colombian soccer, and for the general soccer world. We hope you enjoyed that. Please like and subscribe to the US Sun's YouTube channel, and we'll speak to you next time.